for inviting me. Thank you everybody for being here today. So I will present this project, which is very recent, and also this is the first presentation, so feel free to give me any comments or questions. They will be very appreciated. So the title of this project is Extracurricular Internships and Sorting by Social Status, and this project investigates the sorting of people into different contracts at the beginning of their career according to their socioeconomic status, by which I mainly mean the level of education and wealth of the family of origin, and how this has some potential to worsen the perpetuation of intergenerational inequality. So first of all, I want to provide some motivation for why internships and why are they relevant for this for inequality, basically. So I will be focusing on the Italian setting. So these first graphs refer to the Italian labor market, but this issue is also present in the rest of Europe and even in the US. On the left, you can see the evolution of the prevalence of internships as a fraction of the total number of first contracts activated in years from 2008 to 2020. And you can see that apart from a drop during the COVID period, this trend has been increasing, and particularly so for graduate workers, so for highly educated workers, which are the ones on which I will focus my research in this project. And the graph on the right repeats the same analysis by cohort, and we can see that internships are mostly young workers contracts. So they are particularly prevalent for graduates between 21 and 26 years of age.
So how should we evaluate? Have a look at that. So what happens that there is a conflict between the student, right, and a firm, or what?
So yes, I exactly the next slide describes what I mean by internships. Yes.
I one question.
Yes.
The interpretation of the right figure. So it's at a given time or a given period. How many of these students have had an internship or ever in their life?
No, this refers to the first contracts. So how many of them enter the labor market with an internship contract?
So if somebody's 40 and already have a full-time whatever somewhere, so, but had been an intern.
If they first appear in this 2008 to 2020 data set of the National Social Security Institute, with an internship contract, they are reported in this graph. Yes.
But at age 40? Or,
yes,
or
at age 40. Like some people enter the labor market quite late or enter the official labor market quite late. And also internships had to be declared to the official agency only starting in 2008. That is why they started appearing in the data.
So what was an intern but not already, but he or she is not, then she's not on this graph, right?
If it was before 2008, not. I understood the question correctly. So these are the people that appear for the first time at this age in the data set, this is the fraction of those people that had an internship contract at that point.
Okay, my worry is that what do we read from this? So I'm not at all surprised by this decline on the right hand side, because they could have been interned earlier, but now they are not already, right?
Yes, but if they were interns earlier, it is not reported anywhere, because before internships were not reported to the National Social Security Institute. Yeah, exactly.
So basically, this is a flat line, because on the right, on the left hand side, they will be interned, on the right hand side, they were interns, and in the middle, they are interns. Right?
Yes, in some sense, yes. Okay, yeah. So
I have this very simple question that the way how arrangement is taking place between employer and employee, that they have a first contract, so to say, and then an internship, which is a sort of temporary sort of arrangement, and then a sort of more what are the notions for you?
So basically, okay, first of all, this graph is only about extracurricular internships. So internships that start after the end of the of an individual's degree. And what is peculiar about internships is that differently from a job contract, they provide a form of on-the-job training, and they also entail a very low compensation for the intern, or no compensation at all, although recent regulations have started imposing a minimum compensation. So it is true that some of these internships are for hiring purposes, and I will differentiate between internship with hiring purposes and without hiring purposes in the analysis. But basically there is no there is no need for the firm to actually hire the intern at the end of this period. They have a duration of between 6 and 12 months. They result in a foregone earning of this duration, which follows the foregone earning of the education years. And in this sense, they represent an expensive investment that not all graduates might be willing to do. And in particular, this is true if they represent a positive signal, because an intern might signal to the firm that they are more motivated than average, and they are particularly interested in working there. So in this sense, if they are a positive signal and they are an expensive signal, they could represent a prerequisite to access the best positions in the labor market, thus perpetuating intergenerational inequality, which is what makes this contract interesting. Yes.
Sorry, I'm just a bit puzzled about you're saying that these are internships that start when someone has already finished their education. So for me, this particular signaling mechanism that you're referring to would be that there are some students who are only studying, and there are some other students who are studying and going on an internship. That would be what you were saying. But I'm just thinking about when you are finished with your education, and you have two ways. You can go to an internship and then go to the normal job, or go to your normal job right away.
Yeah.
So does this signal? So if I choose the internship, does this signal that I'm better, or does this signal that I'm worse than the others?
Yes, so it might signal a low liquidity because you cannot get a better contract, but also some firms automatically propose an internship as the first possible contract. Also in Italy, I will show this later, the choice is between an internship and a fixed term contract. So it's very rare, and actually, let me see if I can get there quickly. So, okay. No, sorry. So basically, open term contracts are. So I can go that quickly. Because I know. So here are the same graph as before, but with open term contracts. So people in the young age cohorts between 20 and 30 have a very low chance of receiving an open term contract as a first offer. So less than 10% of young individuals, actually around 7%, receive an open term contract as the first contract in the labor market. And this is for graduate individuals also. So the choice is between a fixed term contract and an internship. Both are have a duration of 6 to 12 months. And so yes, of course, a fixed term contract might signal a higher ability, but some firms just go directly for the internship. And in particular, larger firms are more likely to offer an internship contract. So if you want to work in a big firm, you might be required to go through this contract.
Sorry, just, do we like internship or we don't?
So exactly, this is a very good question because there is no substantive evidence on the fact that internships have a positive impact on labor market outcomes.
Yeah, but what do you think? What do we think? What do you assume? I mean, this is right now I don't know whether you were aiming at showing that internships are very good and there is a social selectivity into it, or internships are very bad and there is a social selectivity.
So my point is that they might be effective in training people on the job and complement general education provided by the universities, or they could be not that effective. But the point is that if firms see them as a positive signal, and they seem to do, there is anecdotal evidence on this, then the fact that they require 6 or 12 months of foregone earnings might mean that low socioeconomic status individuals cannot access the best positions in the labor market because they did not do an internship, independently of whether they are effective at providing this or not. And that is another question which is extremely interesting. I will show you some analysis on that from observational data, but there is no agreement on whether internships are useful or not, basically.
So let me just get back to my point that the timing is the following: that there is a first contract, and then there is an internship, right?
No, the internship is the first contract.
Yeah, but your first graph showed that internship after the first contract.
The internships out of the this is of all the first contracts, that's the proportion of internship. Sorry, yes, maybe I didn't say clear. And this is these are two graphs that show the prevalence of internships divided by the socioeconomic status of the family of origin. Is there a question?
Yeah. So most of the open-ended contracts in almost every country have an introductory period where both firms and workers can quit the job without any legal restriction. So there are these introductory periods, there are fixed-term contracts, and there are these internships, which also have fixed-term. And that's the difference between these three types of work arrangement, and why should we care with internship compared to the other two?
Because internships are a way for the firm to pay the intern very little. So
but you also could offer a fixed wage contract with a very low payment, and actually people in fixed contract are much less than in open-ended contracts.
So fixed-term contracts pay a bit less than open-term contract, but not as little as an internship. So the fixed-term contracts entail a wage, which is regulated by the workers' agreement. So I don't know, in Italy, you wouldn't get a wage of less than 1,000 euros per month, for instance, but an internship is only entails expense coverage. So these internships are paid between 300 and 600 euros. So it's a much lower investment for the firm, which is lower even than those 6 months of open term pay. In case
you can also observe that they have a different code in your data set. How you can compare internship from fixed term contracts empirically.
So in this data, it's reported whether this is an internship contract or fixed term or open term. Yes, these are the National Social Security Institutes which report wages, type of contract, duration of the contract, and so on. Instead, these are taken from a survey of university graduates, which has been done by the Italian Statistical Institute. And in this survey, students are graduates are asked 3 years after graduation what they did to enter the labor market, and of course also their family background, including the level of education and the job position of the mother and the father. So these two graphs refer to two different indices of socioeconomic status. This is based on family education and this on family job position. And we can see that people from a low socioeconomic background are much less likely to do an internship after graduation compared to the one with a high socioeconomic background. The difference is about 7-8 percentage points, and it is significant. So put together, all this motivational evidence brings to my research questions. That is, why are people from different socioeconomic backgrounds selecting into different first contracts of access into the labor market? Is it only liquidity constraints, or do they have different beliefs on what these contracts can lead to in the longer term in their career? And in general, focusing on the process of choice of these individuals, what are the aspects that are most considered, and do they differ across socioeconomic status? Yes.
I'm sorry, but can you go back 2 slides? Do we see the same thing for fixed-term contracts and open-ended contracts as well?
So you mean this is a fraction of individuals saying that they have done an internship? So in this data set,
so I'm saying that, if you see the opposite, I'm guessing not, but if you see the opposite in, let's say, in open contracts, that low SES people are much more likely to end up in open contracts, then we are happy, or we're not that as concerned as in this way, because there is no social inequality, because then poor people get better jobs then.
Okay, so I can check that. I didn't, but what I did check is whether this is also true. So if this is a result of ability, so if this high socioeconomic status people are for some reason less able, in this data set, this is measured by the degree at graduation, degree at high school, and so on. Maybe you're right, like maybe low socioeconomic status people are just smarter and then they get better jobs, but this is also true when you do the same for ability. So basically it is not the case that these are just the more able people who manage to get an open-term job, but definitely I should do that analysis also.
So all I'm saying is that in general, when right now, this is why what I was asking, that I don't know at the very beginning whether you like internships or you don't like internships. So is it a good thing to have an internship, or it's a bad thing to? So in order for me to grasp the whole idea, at the beginning you need to show me that it's very good to get an internship, because it's much harder to get a full fixed term or an open-ended. So let's aim for internships.
Okay, so the point here is that internships are an investment, which is equivalent to the investment in education, let's say. Of course, it's a much smaller investment in terms of time and also in terms of returns, but equivalently to education, there might be a positive return in terms of skill, but also it is a signaling mechanism. And since it is an expensive signaling mechanism, automatically it could be problematic for inequality. But yeah, so I cannot answer whether they are a good thing or a bad thing, because they are an institution which was born with the best aims, like to provide these specific skills that lack in the general training, but ended up being used wrongly by some firms which only exploit it as a way to get cheap labor. So this is why it might be problematic in this sense.
Excuse me, do you see wage in this data?
Sorry?
Do you see wage in this data that you use?
In this one, yes.
Because an easy thing to show would be to plot like starting salaries for those who didn't internship.
Yes,
and
I
those
will
who
show
did
you that.
Bias, yes, and this could be some kind of an indication of whether it really makes sense to do an internship or not.
Yes, so this is what I get performing that analysis. So, okay, this is the result of a propensity score matching analysis. So I compare people who did an internship and people who did not, but matching them with people with the same observable characteristics. And internships have an ambiguous effect in the short term. So these are people with 3 years after graduation. So within 3 years, they have a higher probability of working, but a lower wage, given the fact that they work. However, this is 2 years after the end of the internship. So we do not know what happens 10 years after or 15 years after. And this is the main problem, that internship,
They earn less.
they earn less because they started with an internship, so they didn't have the job progression, the wage progression that they would have had.
But then this is not a good investment because it takes
time.
time and it is less useful than if you had real labor market experience.
Yeah, so
Short term, yeah.
this data set also offers some interesting data on non-monetary characteristics of the job. This is the effect of internship. So, okay, they're more or less, they have no effect on stability, responsibility. They have a positive effect on how they perceive the opportunities of the career in the future. They have a positive effect on the learning opportunities provided by the job they are on. However, there is a negative but not significant effect on general satisfaction. So it might be that an internship lets you access better quality jobs. You sacrifice something in terms of career progression and wage progression, but I cannot see what happens in the long term, which is why I cannot formulate a judgment on internships and in this long-term perspective, and also other studies cannot. So long-term data are very difficult to obtain because internships are also a relatively recent institution, so it's very difficult to get data on long-term outcomes.
What about student loan? Is there a student loan?
So in Italy, there are scholarships more than student loans, so you don't have to pay them back. But they normally cover just the university period, so not the extracurricular internships. So after, so I said more or less what was the point of the study and how am I going to address this question. I basically formulate a model of contract choice, and then I implement a survey experiment. Yes.
So a choice for the firm, whether to.
No, for the students. So it's a supply side focus on the side of the students. I formulate a model of how they choose between different offers. And then I implement this model in a survey in which I ask students to tell me their choices in hypothetical scenarios. And then I estimate the model and the parameters of the model. A quick preview of results, I find that there is no belief channel. So low and high socioeconomic status individuals tend to have the same order of beliefs. So basically, they have quantitatively different beliefs on future outcomes, but they have the same ranking of which contracts can help them achieve these outcomes. So they have the same ordering of internships, fixed-term jobs, and size of the firm concerning their effect on long-term outcomes. And then I see that instead the difference lies in how much they weight different characteristics of the contract. So low socioeconomic status students weight the current wage more and put less weight on the future outcomes. And in particular, they put no weight on the non-monetary outcome that I consider, that is stability, which I proxy by the probability of having an open-term contract at some point in the future. And so these results point to the prevalence of the liquidity constraint channel rather than the beliefs difference. So how does this project fare in the literature? There is a growing strand of literature on the impact of socioeconomic background on individual choices, but this mostly focuses on education. So in this paper, I want to go one step ahead and see how this influences people's choice of entering the labor market. This methodology of choices in hypothetical scenarios, and in particular probabilistic choices, so not a simple discrete choice, but a distribution of probability points to different options, has been used for both schooling and higher education and for labor market contracts. But normally those works that focus on the labor market, just see the impact of preferences on about non-monetary characteristics of the job on the choice of different wages. So how much people are willing to pay for different non-monetary characteristics of the job. Instead, in this case, I also focus on the beliefs channel. And I also, in some sense, like this paper is also in some sense connected to the literature on the impact of internships on labor market outcomes, which, as I already mentioned, doesn't find clear effects of internships for this limitation of not being able to observe the long-term outcomes. And in this paper, I provide some motivational evidence and some answer on that based on observational data, although that is not the main contribution of the paper. So what will follow is a quick explanation of the contract-based model, then the structure of the survey experiment, then I will present the result and conclude. So first, the model. So I have individuals indexed by I that can be either of a low or a high socioeconomic status, where socioeconomic status refers to the level of education and wealth of the family of origin. And these groups are different also in the structural parameters. And then every individual chooses within a set of possible job offers. These offers belong to different types of contracts, and each option set contains two contracts, A and B, and an outside option that is formulated as being unemployed for a certain number of months, which varies between 3 and 9 months. Of course, individuals choose the contract which brings the higher utility, where the value of a contract of type J with wage W is given by this expression. So before entering into details, I want to show you the contract types. So J refers to the contract type. A type of contract can be an internship or a fixed term, but internships have also other specifications. They can be for hiring purposes or for no specified hiring purposes. To highlight the fact that it's very different to do an internship having a very high chance of being hired than just doing an internship for developing general skills. Then I also put firm size as a very important dimension, because big firms offer better prospects for career growth, better wage, and also they are more likely to offer an internship contract. So in this graph, I report the ratio of interns to the total number of employees for firms above 100 employees and below 100 employees, and the line above is the big firms. So these are less likely to have 0 interns and more likely to have more than 2% of their workforce being an intern. So it is there is a trade-off in the choice whenever you are asked to choose between an internship in a big firm or a fixed term contract in a small firm. Basically, that is the most interesting type of scenario I will analyze.
Sorry, but having an internship in a small firm, isn't it more, let's say, attractive in that, you know, if it's a small firm, then you're more likely, and you know you're good, it's more likely that you'll be recognized and offered an open position than in a big firm?
So that's a good point. So I will see what people prefer. If they think like this, this will be captured in the model, because there is this preference parameter for the contract type. But there is, so the question is whether you do an internship to put it in your CV, and then maybe a big firm might be better, or to actually learn skills, and then maybe a small firm, a close follow-up of a trainer could be better. So ex ante, you're right, the choice could be interesting even in that case. And this is why I leave the model open to different kinds of preferences. So this is the trade-off that I think is the most interesting. And we will see that actually people tend to prefer differs, but yeah, absolutely, you could have preferences which go in the direction also. So the value of choosing the specific contract J characterized by a certain wage W is given by the current utility, which is this component here. For the wage, I assume a constant relative conversion function characterized by the parameter rho, which is group specific, and also this non-monetary component gamma, which is the personal taste for the contract type. This represents basically the residual taste after you take out the wage and the expected outcomes condition on the contract. So, and the second component is the expected value of your wage and your probability of open term in the future, given that you are choosing contract J today. So these are going to be conditional outcomes. Whatever remains of your taste for the contract after controlling for the future outcomes and the current wage is in gamma ij, and this is individual specific. It's a sort of error term. And this is, of course, summed up for the number of months that these contracts last. That is 6 months for the internships and 12 months for the fixed term contract. And the time discount factor is beta, and it is also group specific, and it's going to be estimated. Finally, there is this component, this error term epsilon, which is different from gamma because this is a resolvable uncertainty component. And this accounts for the fact that I will ask these people their choice in a survey, but the conditions in the survey are different from those in real life. So this accounts for all the information that the individuals will collect in the time between now and when they are actually doing the choice in the actual labor market. And since there is this component, I will make some assumption on this component following the literature on which uses this methodology in order to be able to estimate these equations using multinomial logic and using the fact that I don't ask a discrete choice, but a probabilistic choice. So probabilistic choice accounts for the uncertainty that is inherent in the fact that this is not a real scenario. Focusing on the expected value of future utility, this is also composed of a wage component, monetary component, and a non-monetary component. For the non-monetary component here, I assume I only consider one aspect, that is job stability. And in particular, this is proxied by the probability of having an open term contract at any point in time in the future, conditional on having chosen contract J today. And I choose this because it is a measurable outcome also in observational data. So it is easier to compare with real life outcomes. And this component is weighted by eta, which is the last structural parameter, and is also group specific, and it accounts for the fact that some people might not weight stability at all. For some people, it might be more important than the monetary component. So finally, the utility of being unemployed, that is the outside option, is identical to the one of type contract J, but instead of the wage, you have this component B, which I assume to be individual specific. And this can be conceptualized as a monetary benefit, but since these people enter the labor market just now, they're not eligible for proper unemployment benefits. So this is a form of parental support or any kind of financial support individuals might get. And in this case, the duration of this is given by the duration of the unemployment spell that I explicitate in the scenarios, and that can be 3 or 9 months. Finally, how are these equations useful in the estimation of the model? As I said, I asked individuals with what probability they would choose each of the available contracts. And then, assuming a type 1 extreme value distribution for epsilon, we have that the probability of choosing A is simply equal to the exponential of the value of A over the sum of the exponential of the values of all the contracts. And this is even easier with the log odds ratio. This is just equal to the ratio of the value of the different contracts. So mapping, yes.
Well, it seems that you are assuming that the decision is on the whole time horizon what you are looking at, right? So there is no possibility to somehow reconsider my decision and switch at some point. Why you are excluding them?
So yeah, basically this is a static model, so they only choose the
For
contract.
the whole full horizon, right?
It's only for those 6 or 12 months of duration of the contract. So they're choosing between an internship of 6 months or a fixed term contract of 12 months. I assume you cannot switch after that, but what I ask, so what?
But I am considering the whole horizon for the firm, what I'm looking at. So this is the rigidity in that model.
So basically, okay, this contract has a certain duration, and then I ask individuals what they believe their future outcomes will be conditional on choosing that contract. But those outcomes refer to any type of contract in any possible firm. So I elicit these beliefs in the survey, and they can refer to any type of contract. So they are not compelled to stay working at the same firm or to have the same contract. So this is just a model which investigates the choice of the first contract, and then what comes after is flexible, but I just don't have it in the model as a choice. So yeah, the beliefs I elicit incorporate the fact that they have to think about what contracts they will choose in the future, what will be available in the future, and so on. Yes. Yes.
If I understood correctly, then you have a partial equilibrium model where there is basically no labor demand. The jobs are exogenously given,
Yes.
and people choose between high and low paying, high and low starting wage because they have different expectations and different tastes. I think that's problematic for 2 reasons. First is that if I remember correctly, then there are no open-ended high-paying jobs in the choice, which is strange. The second problem is that I would guess that many people choose a very low starting wage not because they expect a high return later on, or they have a specific preferences, but because they are not able to find a better job because of these labor demand problems. And I know that this wasn't a question, but rather how to deal with this problem, or is it a problem for you?
So for sure, this is not a complete model, and of course, if you want to know, like if you want to provide a complete explanation of what happens there, you have to take into account the demand side in issues. But when you investigate individuals' preferences, then it is also interesting to abstract from the demand side issues to see what individuals would choose if they were completely free to choose.
But the problem is that if I'm a lower socioeconomic status guy, then I cannot go to a very high paying job. And according to your model, it would seem that I have a different taste than high socioeconomic status guys, which I think is a problem. Because it's a barrier for me, which is not depends on me, but rather on labor demand.
But it is not obvious that you would not be offered a good job just because of your socioeconomic status. So
perhaps it may be correlated with my ability. So perhaps if you wanted to have a labor supply model without labor demand, then I think you should extend it somewhere with productivity. Then some people I cannot find a good job because they are not good enough.
yeah, I think this would be an interesting extension, but still, when it comes to preferences, I think this is already interesting per se. Then you're right to explain what happened in the observational data, that is the interaction between the demand and supply. But it is interesting example to see whether people hold different beliefs or whether they simply have different taste or they are liquidity constrained, even put in a perfect choice situation. Then in real life, choice situation is even less ideal, in the sense that they might not have all the options that I am offering in these scenarios. But and yeah, I agree. One thing that could be done is probably also distinguish individuals based on their ability, which I can proxy by high school grade. That could be an interesting, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so moving to the mapping to the survey, as I said, in the survey, I elicit the probability of choosing each contract, and this is how the question looks like. So they have contract A, contract B, wages are randomly drawn from different distributions. So internships have a lower wage on average, and fixed term jobs have a higher wage on average. And then they choose the probability on a slider with no pointer, so that they are not anchored to any option. And the tool forces them to choose probabilities that sum up to 100. So that's the only forcing that happens. And then I elicit individual beliefs, so that I do not have to assume any belief formation process or any correctness of beliefs, but beliefs are just treated as given and measured in the survey. And these are asked in this form. So I asked for 2 points in time what they think their expected net income will be if they are in this scenario. So if they started their career with a fixed term job, if they started with an internship, and so on. And then this allows me to estimate the structural parameters I showed you before, and also this unobservable taste for each contract, where I normalize the taste for unemployment to 0 and the monetary benefit of unemployment at the individual level. And as I said, expectations are elicited for 2 points in the future, 1 year after the end of the first contract, and at age 35, that is an age in which individuals mostly have figured what their working life is going to be, but it's not too far away to be burdensome from a cognitive point of view. And I asked this for the 2 outcomes I described, the wage and the probability of having an open-term contract. A final concern to take into account here is that there might be endogeneity, because the beliefs are the result of the same cognitive processes that also generate the taste for different contract types. So to address this concern, I follow other works in this literature, for example, Whitwell and Zafar, they prepared from 2015, in which and following them, I implemented information treatment, which consists in providing information about outcomes for a comparable subset of the Italian population, depending on whether these people have started their career with an internship or not. So what they get to know through this information treatment is was the average wage having done an internship or not, and was the probability of an open-term job. And the population I choose is comparable in terms of gender, so this is gender specific, and also I only choose graduates who are below 40 years of age. Unfortunately, I cannot see whether these people have done an internship in a big or small firm, or if the internship was for hiring purposes. So this is a broader set of, like a less granular set of information than the one asked in the survey, but it is still interesting to, it still addresses a part of the concerns. And then concerning the implementation, I recruited the respondents from the Bocconi University lab, which means that these are 500 Bocconi students, which unfortunately is a bit of a limitation because Bocconi is a private university, which implies that these individuals are selected in terms of family wealth and also ability, because like courses have restricted access. So of course, these results are going to be a bit of a lower bound, but it would be interesting to extend the analysis to the national level. And these people are asked to go through a survey of the duration of 30 minutes, more or less, in which they get asked their information, family background, and then they go through this elicitation of beliefs and these choice scenarios, 8 choice scenarios. And then they get treated with the information treatment. Of course, this is true only for 3/5 of the sample, 2/5 are control, but anybody in the sample repeats sections 2 and 3 after the information treatment. And the descriptive statistics, we have balance in terms of gender. People are slightly old with respect to the general population of university students, because most of them are in the masters, only 30% are in the undergrad. Almost all of them do something related with economics, because Bocconi is an economics focused university, so they only have economics majors, and a very small fraction studying political science, statistics, and law. But the overwhelming majority is economics, so this is another limitation. But it also means that the subject of study is not going to influence the results that much. And then the majority of them has done a curricular internship. These are often required in the course, and they do not substitute the extracurricular internship. Yes.
Can you check the high school grade by socioeconomic status? Because I would think that because Bocconi is a private university, as you said, those people who are low socioeconomic background are probably just very talented. That might be a problem.
I will check it. Yes, that's a very good point. And as about the university financing, so as I said, this is a private university, and tuition fees are much higher than the public universities, around 10,000 euros per year. So most of them are financed by family contribution, but some of them also were working while studying and or have previous work savings. Some of them have scholarships, but the overwhelming majority is financed by their family. Yes.
So do you know how the probability of working while studying looks like by SES?
I can check that as well.
Because I would assume that those from low SES backgrounds are probably more likely to work while they are studying, and maybe that's a reason why they don't take up an internship. They don't need it because they already have some experience.
Yes, that's a very good point. Some of these jobs are not related to the field of study, but I agree. Those who are, yes, I will do this analysis also by socioeconomic status. Yes, that's missing here. Thank you. And now I can finally discuss the results. So first of all, in this analysis, just reporting descriptive statistics on what they choose in the scenarios, I do not find the same difference I find in observational data. So like people from a low socioeconomic background are not more or less likely to do an internship, nor to do an internship in a big firm, but they are more likely to do an internship for hiring purposes than people with high socioeconomic background, meaning that maybe they go for something which offers more certainty of being hired. Yes?
It is really strange for me that you do not see there is a difference in internship as you saw in the survey data beforehand. And why it is that? I don't know whether 4,000 euros it's a lot of or not in Italy.
So 4,000 euros for the family income means that both parents earn slightly more than the average wage, which is 1,700. So yeah, this is 2,000 each, meaning both earn more than the average wage. So, but this is the cutoff at which I could get a big sample size in both. But yes, it is basically representative of the average, of a bit more than the average wage. This might be one explanation that if you think about the other sample where people have a much lower family wealth and education of the parents, it might be the case that the difference is driven by people who are even below this. Another explanation is that this is just descriptive, so it doesn't account for the wages that they see. So these are random, but it might be that people below 4,000 see lower wages for internship or higher wages for internship. So I will show you some regressions later that provide definitely more interesting results. So this is just a descriptive evidence which doesn't show the same result as the observational sample, but there might be explanation which are just that this is not particularly informative. So
just a small question: why is the internship is lower than the internship to big firm? It's 32 and
no,
it's 27.
Yeah, this is probably out of those who choose an internship. So here I report the beliefs on future outcomes. So these are only for short-term outcomes, and I report both probability of employment wage, and they differ by scenario. So whether they start with an internship for hiring in a big firm, job in a small firm, or internship in a big firm. And I reported these three because they are the most interesting in terms of trade-offs, but I also have data on the other types. There are 8 types of scenarios, so I just didn't want to overcrowd the slide. And we can see that the absolute values of these beliefs are different according to socioeconomic background. People from a high socioeconomic background have higher beliefs for future outcomes, which is reassuring and quite normal. But the ranking is exactly the same, so we can say that they have qualitatively similar beliefs, and this is not the reason driving. This is not differentiating these two categories. What is different between the two categories is that what predicts their choice in the scenario. So this is a regression analysis which regresses the odds ratio of every 2 contracts A and B over the ratio of these contract characteristics. So I consider the wage, the duration, and the outcomes conditional on those contracts. So we can see that for low socioeconomic status, the current wage is much more important than anything else, and actually no other characteristic is relevant statistically. But for high socioeconomic status, current wage is still very important, but less than the other group, and they also consider the short-term outcomes. So they also give a positive weight to the probability of having an open term, and the expected wage given the contract choice today. And this is particularly interesting because it's true that beliefs do not differ, but the weights assigned to beliefs does differ. And the next result would be the estimation of the structural parameters. Before that, I just want to show you the impact of the information treatment. So whether people update their beliefs according to the information provided, and sorry, they do. I regress the gap between post and pre-treatment beliefs about outcomes. The outcomes are reported on the x-axis. They are the wage for in the long term and in the short term, conditional on the different contracts. The same applies to open term contracts. And this is regressed on the gap between the information provided and the pre-treatment belief. and the result is positive and significant. So they do update the beliefs on average by 20%, 25%. And they update more for short-term outcomes. Finally, I present the structural estimates. So these are done by group for the two socioeconomic status groups. I estimated time discount factor, the risk aversion parameter, and the weight of job stability. The time discount factor is very low because as you have seen here, they do not put a lot of weight on future outcomes. So this translates into a low time discount factor, but it is lower for slightly lower for low income, low socioeconomic status individuals, although the difference is not significant. The risk aversion parameter is pretty high, but again, not different across samples. What is very different across samples is the weight of the non-monetary component of job stability, which is only valued by the high socioeconomic status individuals, and is actually valued quite a lot. Yes.
Is there any intuition for that? It's better just the opposite.
No, that's I think this confirms the idea of a liquidity constraint today, because this means that individuals from a high socioeconomic background give a lower weight to the wage and a higher weight to monetary components, so they can afford to care about whether they are going to have an open term contract in 2 years' time. I mean, yes, it's not obvious ex ante, but I think it makes sense because this just means that low socioeconomic background individuals care more about the monetary component. And these are the distributions for the gamma components, so the taste for the different contract types. We can see that most of them are positive for both samples. So, sorry, yeah, there's so this means that they like these contracts more than being unemployed. But they are much higher for a job in a big firm than, for instance, for an internship in a big firm for hiring purposes, meaning that maybe they perceive this as being more stressful, for instance, with respect to a fixed term job. And also they prefer an internship in a small firm to an internship in a big firm, which might confirm your point that maybe.
So which is which line?
So sorry, this is internship.
No, the lines.
The lines. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry because the colors here are a bit not.
It just comes.
Just
So,
show
yeah.
which is high and which is low. That's
Okay.
The hard.
The gray one. So in this case, this is low and this is high.
Yeah.
And- Yeah, this is low and this is high. Sorry, the colors are not showing, but there's okay. So yes.
I think that's here is the problem that I tried to mention beforehand. You mentioned it seems on the top on the left corner that high socioeconomic status people like more to work in these small firms without hiring, which seems for me they are the worst jobs. So and by the high so it seems for me that these are kind of differences that the high, the rich family children go to these firms because they are only able to go there, and not because they have different tastes. So that's why your taste parameter may be correlated with ability. If if one parameter is biased, then everything becomes biased.
Mm-hmm. I can repeat this viability to control for this. Yeah, I still think that they should, like in this case, they are choosing between options which are theoretically available, so it should just reflect taste. But yeah, it would be interesting to repeat the analysis by ability as well. And this is the unemployment benefit. The value is very low, but it seems to be different across the subsample. Low socioeconomic status individuals have a smaller financial benefit from unemployment. So to conclude, I have found that students from different socioeconomic groups don't have different beliefs about future outcome conditional on initial contracts, but they assign different ways to different characteristics of the job. In particular, low socioeconomic status individuals weigh the wage more and current outcomes more than future outcomes, which is in line with the prevalence of the liquidity constraint channel. And then just a quick discussion of the limitations of this analysis. As I said, Bocconi students are positively selected, so it would be interesting to repeat this analysis for a broader and more diversified sample. And also, this is a question that is often asked in this kind of in the papers which follow this methodology, that is whether the answers in the survey match real life choices. As we have discussed, real life choices are an interaction of demand side and supply side. So of course they will not match 100%, but it will be interesting to do a follow-up after the students graduate to see what they actually chose in real life. And this concludes the presentation.
Any more questions? Well, I think that you said that this is an investment, right? But we don't know anything about the product, what the investment results in. Say that how firm specific are those investments. And this might simply have an impact on the choice of the student, because, you may think that perhaps there are, so to say, private information that what is the nature of the internship of this or that firm. So perhaps the firm fix effect might also play a role if you know the information where those internships take place, say within these brackets of multinational firms. And if those investments are strictly firm specific, then the choice is impacted by that information as well. On the other hand, if these are transferred, then this might be a different impact on the decision of the student.
So yes, I think it's an important point. I thought about this a lot when devising the survey, but it seems that students don't have a lot of information on what they are going to do in the internship, especially in the multinationals, because it really depends a lot on which team you're assigned to, and ex ante you cannot really know. And especially in economics, there are very few super specific non-transferable skills. So they are mostly formed on general skills or slightly specific to finance, let's say, but they are also usable in all the other competitor firms. So I would say for this sample, it should not be a big issue. Like they care a lot about whether the internship is for hiring or not. In that sense, yes. But I might have tried to search a bit on these websites like Glassdoor or similar websites for information on how an internship would look like, and I couldn't really find much. So I think for them it's also quite difficult. I mean, maybe they know someone who is doing an internship there, but also different people working in the same company have a completely different view of their experience. So this very broad categorization of big firm versus small firm accounts for firms' differences, but yes, of course, it would be better to have a more granular one, but yes.
But you mentioned at the beginning, I think these internships aren't very cool because you can just get labor below the minimum wage, which is not fine in any sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But once you have the utility function of individual, which I think is perfect, you can estimate the structure, then perhaps you could make some kind of a welfare assessment. What would happen if you would put restrictions on internships, whether in the length of these contracts or the amount of money they have to pay, or what would happen if you would simply abolish them? which I would think would be the best. But
Yeah.
I think it would be very interesting, and it also would have to start the paper out.
That's a good point. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Two more questions.
Why did you opt for the socioeconomic status? It seems to me that you measure it not quite well. I mean, income, especially because, you know, these are the distribution students and Bocconi. So one set aside question is that, you know, whether your results are robust to how you actually do this cutoff. If you do
They are
quartiles
about
and-
to education of the mother.
Yeah, but if you go like, okay, you don't halve it, but you go like fifth or to the quartiles or terciles or anything else. But why are you not going for some other dimensions, let's say gender, which based on, you know, 50-50, it's quite easy sometimes to sort of sort people. There's no.
Yeah,
and-
that's definitely something I could do. I agree. It's not that difficult to adapt this to the gender. So yeah, to be super honest, this started as a socioeconomic status paper, and then I was supposed to collect this data at the Italian level, and I couldn't, so I ended up collecting in Bocconi, which makes the socioeconomic dimension a bit less relevant. So yes, you're right. It might sell better if I just choose a more convincing dimension for this sample, and then maybe repeat this analysis on another sample for which the socioeconomic dimension is.
There is some literature, there is an aspiration that according to socioeconomic status, so low sense people have lower aspiration. But if I understood correctly, then your choice experiment takes care of that issue, because they have like they aspire to the same contracts or I don't know. So is aspiration level a concern for you?
So I guess I mean, it might be related to how much they weight future outcomes. So if they think that something will result in better longer term outcomes, then they should choose it, even if the wage now is lower. And in that sense, I confirm this because the weight to long term outcomes is lower for low socioeconomic status.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.